Hey, welcome back to Stories with Dave. Today, we're reading the first couple pages of Chapter 4 of Hokey Pokey, The Dicks of Hazzard. Socially frictionless soft opening, Nipper said. He thought hard about that for a second, furrowed his brow, and said, Daggum, Spence. It sounds like having sex already, and you ain't even put nothing on the shelves yet. The crew, Carla, Nipper, Tammy, Code Talker, Teresa May, and Spencer, had all gathered at Honeycomb Hideout to load the first moving van. Honeycomb Hideout was what everybody called an old farmhouse Nipper and Code Talker rented with Wally the Tweaker on Maddox Avenue, close to the campus of Dixie College in town, where Nipper and Code Talker were enrolled as part-time third-year seniors. Spencer had the merchandise shipped to the Honeycomb Hideout to Tammy's house in the same neighborhood just a couple streets away to avoid any unwanted attention, and also because there was only so much space left to work with in Spencer's office down at Siesta. They spent the early morning relaying boxes full of merchandise from the living room of the Honeycomb Hideout to the back of the moving van across the makeshift bridge of 2x8s that Nipper used to connect the porch to the truck. It took them an hour and a half to move and stack all those boxes. The neighbors watched them from the shaded obscurity of curtained windows and sipped their morning coffee and said, Now, if that ain't some kind of drug operation, I'm a monkey's uncle. Hands reached for telephone receivers. Fingers dialed phone trees remembered since childhood. Dialed them almost without thinking about it, transmitting the news across the county grid like geometric wildfire. Have you heard? Oh, shit fire. Well, are you sitting down? Mavis Greenwood had it from Deanie Watson that her cousin Mary Bryant saw Spencer Ammon and some of his people loading a big shipment of marijuana into a moving van this morning, right out in front of God and everybody. Yes, sirree. Next, the crew stopped at Tammy's house to load the second van. The ringing of telephones followed the crew on their brief journey across town. Spencer and Tammy and Spencer's wife Carla drove the vans. And Nipper and Code Talker followed close behind in their own vehicles. As they loaded the second van at Tammy's house, a second, fresh set of phone calls went out into the social matrix with an even bigger, better payload, this time from Tammy's neighbors. The presence of Code Talker in Nipper's vehicles gave the new rumors a different flavor. They left the placards in the windshields that the Census Bureau had provided for the non-response follow-up count, the ones that said federal government in big red block letters. Code Talker was in the process of removing his that morning when Nipper said, Hold on a second there, cuz. These might come in handy if we run across any nosy cops up there in Overton. Good call. Couldn't hurt. By the time they loaded all the merchandise that had been shipped from Tammy's house, which took them another hour at least, the news of their business had morphed considerably, and the first calls began to connect farther up the plateau, the Muddy Pond and Soddy Daisy, where there was a whole holler and two ridges plumb eat up with nothing but Ammonettes and people kin to Ammonettes. Well, they finally busted old Spence. Dale's boy, yeah, that's right. Feds got him red-handed with about 500 pounds of that marijuana. Copeful, yep. I reckon it was bound to happen sooner or later. After they finished up at Tammy's house, they made the short trip into town to fetch the last of the boxes from Siesta. Hell, why don't we just meet y'all up there, Spence? Nipper suggested. Might be good to have less vehicles show up all of a sudden like that. I'd rather keep us all together, to tell you the truth, Spencer said. I know it don't make no sense. I'd sure feel a lot better about it, though. There weren't too many boxes left to load out from the Siesta. Enough to keep them busy for a half hour or so. In that 30 minutes, at least a dozen witnesses saw Spencer Ammonette being held at gunpoint against the exterior wall of Siesta Imports. One of them had passed slowly enough to pick up a lot of really rich, important details, like balaclava masks and short-barreled assault rifles equipped with silencers. Man, they had them things pointed right at old Spencer's noggin, and he was just flailed out on the parking lot with his arms and legs spread out to his sides, fishing up and down like he was trying to make him a pavement angel. The phones rang, curtains parted a little at the houses from Lebanon to Ozone Falls, as anyone who knew anyone on the plateau received one of the now various available versions of the story, of how the legendary Spencer Ammonnette had been killed in a running gun battle with FBI agents in the center of town, and how members of his crew had made it all the way to Martins Creek, where they had to abandon their truck, and where they were last seen by old Lewis Watson as they floated past him toward the Cumberland River, clinging to a bale of local grown hemp. Back in the world of the tangible, Spencer and the crew had finished loading the rest of the boxes from Spencer's office at Siesta Imports, and the crew had all gathered by the vans in the parking lot to await marching orders. "Okay," Spencer said. "I reckon that's everything." One by one, the moving trucks pulled out into Jefferson Avenue and drove south toward I-40 on the old Ridge Runner Road, which coiled like a grandfather black snake molting against the knees of the mountains among the hamlets named after the families who lived there. Families who had always lived there in one form or another, who had always gathered as they were gathered now, along broad stone hearths where lengths of hickory and knotted pine lay smoldering under kettles hung for coffee and chocolate-spiked moonshine, to stare down the wolves of winter in an annual vigil they had come to call fate. One by one, the vans passed by on the road, and in between those, the trucks with their ominous windshield placards. Ring, ring, and the phones ringing chased them, curious convoy of questing knights, far out into the misty winter twilight, all the way up to Overton County.